Hey, you guys, we are live. Get ready for another cool show. Been a while since I've podcast, but good to be back again. Anyway, we got a show tonight with a special guest who is with, as you can see, Futurpreneur Canada, and he works with Indigenous people to get them started going for entrepreneurs. So stay tuned for that right after this. All right, I think I'm okay. Sorry, guys. I'm battling res Wi-Fi. As you know, on my previous podcasts, I've always battling res Wi-Fi. But hey, we're back. It's good to be back here doing this. I've been helping a lot of a couple of reserves and some other people get off with their starting off with their podcast. So yeah, good to be back and doing this. And I hope you guys enjoy tonight's show. It's about how to become an entrepreneur, how they can the success stories and all that. And we're going to be joined by a young man who works with Futurpreneur and works for the Indigenous people. And yeah, we're going to get right to it. So bring him on. Hello, hello, hello.
Tansei bonjour. How you doing, my friend?
Oh yeah, bonjour. That's how you guys say. Oh, because you're OG. Go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Okay, Tansei. Bonjour ani Noah Wilson Indigenous Cas, Oshki Ishkanigan and Dunjiba, Wabshishi Nedontem, Ndenaway Magnadak. Hello everyone. My name is Noah Wilson. I am located in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Treaty 1 territories, homeland of the Métis Nation. My home community is Peguis First Nation here in Manitoba. Interlake region, and super excited to be on the podcast today. This is actually my first podcast, so very, very excited. But I'm the business development manager for Indigenous young entrepreneurs at Futurpreneur Canada. So I basically help young Indigenous entrepreneurs between the ages of 18 and 39, create their business plans, develop their business ideas, and ultimately help them get financing to get their Indigenous business off the ground, whether that be a side hustle or a full startup. So it's an absolute privilege to be on the podcast today, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it is exciting. Like I was telling Noah, I've interviewed people, and right after the show, they're asking a million questions, and like in a month down the road, they have their own podcast. So who knows where this is going to lead?
Yes, very, very, very good chance there could be a podcast in the future. Who knows? You might get me hooked.
Noah Wilson, what would you call it? What would be your catch? What would be your theme?
I think it would be Indigenous economic development or something of the sort, or Indigenous business success. And really what I would want to do is interview Indigenous business owners, because that's what I do all day. It's the best job ever. I get inspired by Indigenous entrepreneurs all over Manitoba and Saskatchewan. That's the region I cover. Yeah. So it's the funnest job ever. It's so inspiring, and I feel selfish just kind of being able to be inspired every day by Indigenous entrepreneurs and not be able to share that with everyone. So that would definitely, I think that would be maybe the topic, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I see. That's what I was trying to go with. Is that your cat too?
Yeah, my cat. She's gonna be jumping in here for sure.
Oh,
She
my
gets
cat does that
her fair share of
sometimes.
attention.
My cat's sitting there like I'm doing a podcast. He'll jump on top here in my couch, my chair here, gets in the pit. But before we get started, you guys, don't forget to check out iops.ca for your daily jobs. I am trying to make it become the number one Indigenous job source website in Canada. So check out that. You guys, if you have any questions tonight about entrepreneurship, feel free to ask Noah. This is what he's coming on for. We are going to hopefully turn this into a series of podcast. We're in partnership with, where IOPS is in partnership with Futurpreneur. And yeah, the main thing is just trying to get more Indigenous people to explore the world of entrepreneurism. And trust me, as I am one and have been one, it is one of the hardest things you're ever going to do, but one of the most rewarding things. It's hard to go back to a 9 to 5, even though if you're when your businesses have failed, guaranteed you get that bug, and you know you want it even more. And then even though if you're like I've had three businesses, and the first one failed, and after that I just wanted it more and more and more and more. Yeah, it's an amazing time. So we're gonna get to that, and if you guys have any questions while we do this podcast, feel free to ask them, and Noah will answer them. So go
Absolutely.
ahead. And we are going to bring up your website and our Futurpreneur website. But let's get started, man. Like, how did you get to where you are? And remember, everyone, this is kind of just a feel. You guys get to know Noah. And then after that, we're going to do a couple more podcasts where it's going to be just in depth, about what Futurpreneur is all about and how you guys can access them to succeed as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I was just hoping to have, just a genuine conversation. And our team, we always, position, I think it's just a part of how I've been brought up too, is, establishing those relationships, before anything. And, me and Nathan have always been talking about that. And I think, getting to know someone is is an important part of business, and it's an important part of life. So just happy to share my story and how I was able to get to Futurepreneur. But, yeah, I guess it's a big question. I think I've had a long journey. It's been quite a crazy year, I think, for everyone, but certainly for myself as well. But definitely one that I can be grateful for, and I see a lot of the blessings that Creator has sent my way in recent months. But I guess where should I start, Nathan? Where should I start from?
Let's just start. Obviously we know who you are, where you're from. Let's kind of go where how you started working, like how you got to where you are in Futurpreneur, like what jobs led
Sure.
you to Futurpreneur.
Yeah, yeah, I could start. Yeah, and I think that starts. I'll start kind of when I entered university, because I think that's when I really came into my own, and I owe a lot to my community, Pegulas First Nation, for allowing me to go to university, and giving me the opportunity to go, in terms of their supports to me. So shout out to Pegulas First Nation. But you know, I grew up across Canada quite a bit. I lived in Lac du Bonnet, which is a little town in Manitoba. I actually lived in Regina, Saskatchewan for a bit in my earlier life. I lived in the Yukon. So I've lived all over Canada. I've seen a lot of cross sections, and I always spent my summers at my grandma's, on Peguis, at Peguis. My grandparents, Frank and Florence Wilson, they owned the local. It was called the Pine Cone, and it was like a dairy bar and food shop. And I remember, like, some of my best memories were always being on the reserve, and being at my grandparents, and spending the summer there and treaty days, and really kind of being engulfed in my people. But I also would go back to metropolitan cities that I was living in. At the time, it was Forge Prairie, which is a town or a city in Manitoba, but it's a border city. So there was a lot of racial tension, in terms of anytime you have a town or a municipality close by a First Nation or whatever the sort. There's always those tensions. And in terms of my complexion, I'm not, my background is OG Cree or Cree mostly because my family is kind of interconnected with Fisher River and then Norway House. So you know how it goes. But ultimately, my parents, and my grandparents grew up in Peguis First Nation. But ultimately, when I was in Portage, there was an opportunity, or there's situations where my peers would be speaking badly against my brothers and sisters, First Nations, my cousins, my dad, my grandparents, and not in the sense that they were legitimately talking bad about them, but by virtue of them speaking against my people and really bringing them down. And I remember, really kind of gaining. My dad always taught me to never be ashamed of who I was, and to like always, to always, be true to who you are. And I could have, went the path of kind of shielding my background and shielding my family, and kind of not making certain confrontations, but I made a conscious choice to kind of make those confrontations. And as I learned throughout my life, I realized that the fighting, or kind of being aggressive about approaching these situations where someone's being racist or someone's talking bad against my people. It would be easier to be well educated on the history of our people, and to like really dive into the facts, because when people would speak like they knew something about something, I would be able to correct them. And it kind of came up from a spiteful place, but I in terms of trying to prove other people, but it quickly turned into a passion, and just realizing how much I love my people. So ultimately, I've always been very passionate about Indigenous history, First Nations history, Métis history, Inuit history, and the diversity amongst even communities within those communities. And so when I got to university, I always knew I wanted to give back to my community somehow, because they were the ones that were allowing me to go to university, and it was only right that I give back to the community that's giving to me. And I think that's how I've always been raised, in terms of the spirit of reciprocity, and that giving spirit. And true wealth in my communities, and many communities I've been to, is how much you're able to share with others, and how much you're able to give back. It's not about hoarding everything to yourself and keeping it. And I always really took that to heart, and how can I give back to my community? So I was an athlete, so I went into university mainly focused on football. So I went into university. I knew that I wanted to do something with First Nations rights and Indigenous rights, and really dive into that, and really just absorb as much information about that as possible. But my main focus when I entered university was football. So a lot of my self-confidence and leadership abilities came from football, and sports and athletics, which I think is so important for youth out there today, is to be involved, to be on a team, and get be active if you can. And that's a privilege that I've been able to have throughout my life. And I realized that that's not the case for many of my brothers and sisters on the reserve. So I'm very blessed, and I cherish those opportunities. And I think that's really helped me understand the value of teamwork. And they always said, I always liked football because you could be skinny, you could be a tall guy skinny and have a place. You could be a short guy and fat, and there'd be a place for you on the team. And it's about trusting the guys around you, and being able to trust in one another to do your job. And if you did your job to the best ability, you can be a successful team. I was always on a team where we really focused on teamwork and things like that. But there was other teams that had crazy athletes and all this crazy stuff, but they didn't work as a team. So we always used to beat those teams, and I always took that with me. But ultimately, I went into university playing for the Winnipeg Rifles, which is the Winnipeg Rifles.
Is that a high school team, or is that like a
That's a junior football team. So there's we actually
like Saskatoon Hilltops.
yeah, we used to face them. Yeah, we used to face them. I
They
was
used to
on
be
the
too bad, I bet all the time. No, I'm
yeah,
just- I know the Hilltops are a really good team. So
oh, they're really good, and I hate it. So we absolutely hated the Hilltops. I'm sorry for anyone who's a Hilltop fan, but I was on the Rifles, so you can't hate me too much.
yeah,
Yeah, but no, I think you know they're a great program. Everyone knows that. So yeah, we used to face the Regina Thunder, which was another junior team that I used to bus out to Saskatchewan all the time, and we faced Calgary teams. Like there was a Calgary team and two Edmonton teams in the Prairie Football League. But that was fun. That was a good time. But ultimately, there was like a pivotal year. Every year I was on the team, the head coach changed, and like it was like the third year, and then the team like fired the head coach again, and then all of the supporting staff. And I was like, honestly, like I'm throwing I'm facing guys from Saskatoon who are like, you know, 6'5" and like eating small pigs to themselves, and just like I'm having to fight these guys, and I'm putting my body on the line for this. So I was like, my heart wasn't into it all that much. So one of my best friends, Chance Papanicus, you know, shout out to Chance if he gets a chance to see this, but he's always been my really good friend. When I first moved so I moved a lot in my youth. I moved to Winnipeg in grade 9. You know, I joined sports, and when I first moved here, and by the way, I'm a twin, so I should mention that I have a twin sister.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So yeah, so I have a twin sister. She's actually in third year med. Yeah, sister. Yeah, yeah. So she's in her third year med school right now. So shout out to my sister. Yeah, she's
Get her on the show.
Sorry, get her on the show. She's the next one.
Yeah,
she's the next one. So my beautiful sister, she's studying medicine at the University of Manitoba right now. She's actually in Morden right now, doing a rotation there. So very cool. Actually, she's a group of, you know, there's quite a few Indigenous, you know, of my peers and her peers in that program. So it's amazing to see so many amazing Indigenous youth really taking charge.
We have to promote them. Like we need to do shows like this and other podcasts like Sequin Spring Spirit. She does a podcast. Same thing. Like, you know, we need to get Indigenous success of any kind, you know, especially when they're a doctor. She's coming to be a doctor. Like,
I know. Yeah.
Man, like having Indigenous, you know, a doctor, man, that's huge. Anyway, sorry, I got excited when you said, you know, she's a doctor, and like that's pretty awesome. So
hey, she motivates me. Like when I look at her, I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing with myself? I have to step my game up. So and that's part of being a twin, you know, you're always being kind of compared. But honestly, I'm so proud of her, and we've always been a really good team in terms of being competitive. Like honestly, I think like that's part of my success, is having such a impressive, talented sister. And then having my dad having to compare to me, I was like, I better have my A game like at all times, because you know my sister is just leading the way. And I think that's a story of many of our communities. And shout out to all the strong Indigenous women and two-spirited folks out there. I think, you know, that speaks to a lot of our women who are leading the way and really inspiring and inspiring me. I know that for a fact, in terms of doing better for myself and my community for that matter. So shout out to all the women and strong Indigenous women out there who are really inspiring, you know, men like me to do better.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you know, I played football. I was kind of what you could say, you know, I was focused. I was somewhat of a meathead. You know, you could say that. I wouldn't hate you. But you know, not
you're always in the gym.
Oh yeah, I was just in the gym. I was like all about it. You know what I mean? I was like football. I live, breathe football. Like I still coach football to this day. Like if COVID wasn't a thing, I coach my high school football team. So I just love football. Like I just live, breathe, and I ate football. And then there's a point where I was just like putting my body on the line for a team or a coach that I just, you know, didn't believe in and didn't really want to be a part of at the time. And when you're facing and you're doing like a sport like that, and you're facing Saskatoon Hilltops and the Regina Thunder, and you're going full speed, and you know you could be seriously injured any play. And I was just thinking to myself, you know, what do I want to do? And my best friend Chance, I always remember this. So at the University of Manitoba, there's an Indigenous Student Center, and it's called Migaziagamek, Bald Eagle Lodge, and it's a beautiful place. Oh my gosh, I wouldn't have been able to make it through university without it. It was just an amazing community. Still is. I still support them every now and then, but when I can. But ultimately, we walked into Migaziagamek because you got to go to where the community is. You got to go where your brothers and sisters are, and that support group. And this is why I think it's important. We're having this conversation today too. Is providing, letting other Indigenous people see other Indigenous people, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, really, shooting for the stars, like really working hard and having that community to support one another when you're up and you're down and everything in between. That's what it was for me. And so we walked in there. It was just a great spirit. We had elders and residents. We had specialized counselors. It was just an amazing space. And he brought me into the room and he was like, "Hey, Noah," like he was the president of the Indigenous Students Association at the time, and he was like, "Hey, Noah, like we're about to do elections, and have you ever thought about student leadership?" And I was like, I play football. Like I don't do student leadership. I was like, I don't know. Like I was kind of like put off by it at first, but then, as the football season went on, and I had a summer job landscaping, so I would just be like in the sun like all day, then go to football all evening, and then wake up and do it like every day. And I was like losing weight, and I was like a D lineman, so like when you're entering into season, like you're eating everything and anything, so you're just trying to gain weight. And I was like losing weight, and I was like getting like, so I was like, okay, never. So I sat down with him. We sat on the deck, like we usually do, and we had a cigarette, and he was talking, and he was like, like I think you'd be a really good leader. I think you'd be a good student leader. Like how to lead on football. Like you're passionate about your people. You're very into my studies at the time. So I started taking Native studies. I was taking all of these like. I remember there's this one course, The Politics of Native Resistance. Oh my gosh, Dr. Valandra. He's shout out to him. He was an amazing prof. He really taught me. He sparked something in me, I would say, in terms of my passion for Indigenous rights and when I actually entered university, it was 2014, and that was right at the closing of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And Murray Sinclair and Negon Sinclair, his son, were doing closing ceremonies at the University of Manitoba. And if you've ever been to the University of Manitoba, there's the Truth and Reconciliation National Center there. So all of the archives from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission are lodged there at the University of Manitoba, which is amazing. And so Murray Sinclair was giving a speech, and I remember I was sitting in there for a sociology class because I had to go to a school event and write about it. So I was like, obviously I'm going to Truth and Reconciliation closing ceremonies with Murray Sinclair to hear what he has to say, because he was like my hero, still is. He's from my community, by the way, Peguis. I literally remember crying because he told the story. He told about the truth. You can't have reconciliation without first the truth. And he went through the truth. He went through the truth of what happened with the Indian residential school system and the atrocities and genocide and the cultural genocide that happened. And it was just, I remember sitting there and I like literally cried, and I was like, wow, like I was just absolutely moved. And that day I remember I was like, I'm doing something in Indigenous studies of some sort. I just didn't know what it was going to be and where my like passions would be. Yeah. But so I started taking that, and I was like, you know what? I'll run. I'll see if I can do both. And if one doesn't work out, it's whatever. So at the time at Winnipeg Rifles, I was like right about to be a starter for the year. So then I was like, you know what? I'm going to try out for the Bisons, see what's up there. And when I showed up there, I actually had a pretty good camp, and I was very close to making the team, but I didn't make the team on last cuts. Literally talked to the head coach. My ankle was like literally this big, but I was like still playing, and I think that's why he like kept me around, because like every time I'd go to the training room, they're like, you can't play. And I was like, just tape up my whole leg. So they just taped up my whole leg. I would go out there. And, but ultimately it didn't really work out. My heart was in it. You know, your heart needs to be in these type of sports if you're really like putting your body on the line. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to leave this. I'm going to leave the sport. And I literally took I'm like a Capricorn, and my girlfriend, she's always like doing astrology. She's like, you're so like focused on goals and stuff. So I literally did like pros and cons of leaving football, and I did it, and I was just like, my mentally was not in it, so I was just like making every reason to like not be in it, and like every reason to like to explore my passions for student leadership, or my assumed passions. Maybe I wasn't gonna love it, maybe I was gonna hate it, but when you come from football, you go to an environment where it's very athletic, very like competitive. There's no feelings. Like you break your finger, you put it back in place, and you go play, and like don't cry about it, And then I'm going to student leadership where you have to be compassionate, you have to be thoughtful, you have to be reserved, you have to be cognizant of how you act. So I was very nervous about having to go from like one extreme where like you're just acting like a madman.
Basically, night and day. It's night and day.
Oh yeah, it was night and day, environment. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Like I need to have it's like anything in life, you need a balance. You need to see, and I think that's a part of learning. I think our youth, when they make mistakes, it's just about seeing balances of life. And some people and our people aren't able to, that's what you call, the systemic problems with justice. Every youth goes through the situations where you're learning about the world and you're testing the things out, and then just other community and certain minority groups, especially Indigenous peoples, they get focused on and picked on by the justice system, in situations where you're just learning about life, where every other community in the city or like a suburb in Winnipeg, where the kids are doing the exact same things, but there's not that persecution of exploration. So it's just like these systemic problems, and I've been super privileged to be in situations where I haven't had to be like, or I've been lucky, I would say, like in terms of like being able to explore and see different like avenues and try every angle like of things, and luckily I was able to kind of stay with my peers in terms of the ones who are very positive influences in my life. And I think that's really kind of the really blessing that I received in my youth without even realizing it, until now, right? But so ultimately, I took on the role. I was a director of finance for the Indigenous Students Association. I ended up loving it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. I get to talk with other really passionate Indigenous youth. We're getting after it. We're like writing letters. We're getting like, it's just amazing. So I decided to run for president, and there was no head coach change. So I was like, you know what? I have 3 more years of eligibility at the time. So I had like 2 years to really do what I wanted to do in Indigenous, leadership at least. So I ran for president the next year. And then I also ran for the Indigenous students rep. So for the students union. So like at the University of Manitoba, there's the Indigenous Students Association. We called it UMISA. So University of Manitoba Indigenous Students Association, UMISA. And then there's UMSU, which is the University of Manitoba Students Union. And they kind of like, they're like the entire body that all of the students kind of that are represented by. And then so I was the Indigenous representative there, and then the president of the Indigenous Students Union, the Indigenous Students Association. But ultimately, I got both roles, and basically I ran on two kind of platforms, I guess you could say. Chance taught me a lot about kind of student like procedures and things like that. I had no idea there was like so much procedures and all that stuff, but I was taught that, and a lot of the other students there, the Indigenous students, were really involved before me, really passed down their teachings and really kind of shared with me, their experience. And so I just jumped right in. I was terrified. I was scared, I was excited, I was every like feeling under the sun, you know. But ultimately, I ran under the idea that there should be the truth and reconciliation. Me and my friend Chance, over the summer, we came up with, we were kind of toying with this idea called the Reconciliation Campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Chance was just leaving his leadership role, and I was about to kind of retake like the work that he was doing, because we had done all this work in the past year, and in student leadership, people graduate, people leave roles, and when you make momentum, like you need to kind of have like a plan to like keep it going. So me and Chance over the summer were like, okay, I'm gonna run for president right after you. We're gonna keep this going. We're gonna kind of take your vision and like execute it and make sure that it happens. It's just the timing of life. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. So we came up with this campaign called the Reconciliation Campaign, kind of centralized around the idea that there's a lot of talk and no walk in terms of Indigenous, you know, by the governments and I guess you could say societies, implementation of these calls to action that Indigenous peoples, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples have been asking for since millennia. Like it is our right as people and nations to have these, these rights, so basically the idea was like, okay, everyone's talking about truth and reconciliation, but is anyone taking any action? Like, you can acknowledge, how are we going to take action in the university, in the administration? Like, what are you doing to make sure that truth and reconciliation is occurring at the institutional level, which is where systemic racism, where, systemically, Indigenous peoples are disadvantaged. And that is historically and empirically proven. So what is happening? At the University of Manitoba, we had the Truth and Reconciliation National Center on campus, and we were like, what is happening? So that's what happens with grassroots movements. That's what happens when Indigenous peoples, First Nations peoples, Métis, Inuit peoples come together and work together and come up with a plan and a grassroots movement. And someone who really inspired me was George Manuel. Have you ever heard of George Manuel?
No.
So George Manuel, he was the first national chief of the National Indian Brotherhood in BC, and he wrote my favorite book of all time is called The Fourth World by George Manuel. But there's a really good book written by his son, Arthur Manuel. It's called Unsettling Canada. And he talks about the Constitution Express and how, our people were able to basically ensure that our rights were enshrined within the Constitution of 1982. Because what happened in 1982, the Trudeau first government was repatriating the Constitution, which basically meant that they were recreating the Constitution and they left out Indigenous rights. So the first draft of the Constitution, sorry?
I said shocker.
Yeah, right? Literally, they were trying to finesse us and we were like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, this is not happening. And it was people like George Manuel and all of those amazing leaders who really came together. And what they did was, so the first draft of the Constitution came out, and Section 35, so the enshrinement to the recognition and affirmation of Aboriginal rights that are enshrined in our Constitution, Section 35 was not included in the first draft. And what happened was that we organized, and we organized very well. We were very disciplined. We had, kind of a system in place, and it was this idea called the Constitution Express. So what happened was George Manuel and the National Indian Brotherhood, they organized and they started on the Trans-Canada Railway, the CN Railway, or like, CN, basically they took a train from BC that started in BC and made its way to Ottawa. And as they made it, west to east to where Ottawa is, they were picking up, our brothers and sisters along the way. And then as they were going, all of the National Indian Brotherhoods were giving lessons on the train. what is nonviolent direct action? How do you get a message across without it being attacked by the government, by agitators who can kind of really destroy your message? So it's about giving a message, being very disciplined. So if any one of those people were interviewed, that day, they would have had an exact, they would have had a similar stance or a very good understanding of the situation at hand. And what happened is, as that train was like traveling to Ottawa, you can imagine like the RCMP were trying to find reasons to kick him off, like they couldn't do it, and like it was getting national attention. And then what happened was that they also went to Britain. They actually went to the British Parliament, and George Emanuel and I can't remember the names right now. Forgive me, but they went to the British Parliament because in order for the Canadian Constitution to be patriated, which just basically means removed from the British, colonial system, I guess you could say, it would have had to receive royal assent in the British Parliament. So what the National Indian Brotherhood did is they went to Britain and in full regalia, and they said, you cannot pass a bill that's under contention with the nations that have been established, the nation that you today call Canada under your colonial context, right? And ultimately the British Parliament was like, there's too much disputes going on, we can't pass the bill. So ultimately all of that work from all that organization was allowed, like that went into that, and all of that, coordination and communication with no internet at the time, like with like literally like, RCMP coming out their doors and like literally, trying to ruin everything. They were able to get this done and enshrine Section 35 in the Constitution. And that's the reason why like we're able to, exercise our rights, from a legal standpoint today, and why we've been able to have these like Supreme Court rulings that are actually going in recognizing Aboriginal rights and title rights and land rights. And so I was just thinking, I was like, how did they do that? Like, that is so amazing. Like, they had, like, we have internet, we have Facebook. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, if they could do that, like, we can do this. Like,
Yeah,
us youth, we can do this. Like, all it takes is passion and a commitment to an idea and discipline.
yeah.
So me and Chance, and everyone on the council, Kristen Flattery, there was many others on the council, Kayla LaRiviere. So all these people on the council, and I would never take credit for any of this, just as collective credit. We were able to launch this campaign called Reconciliation, which basically, so what we did was here, I'll show you. We literally went to, we took this book. This is the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action booklet. Mm-hmm. And these were being given out across the campus. And we were like, this is what it takes to do reconciliation. You go into here, you find a call to action that's relevant to you, and you implement it, and you fight to implement it. So we opened it up. We're like, what setting are we in right now? We're in a post-secondary setting. We're in a post-secondary institution, and you can get a degree in Russian, but you can't get a degree in Anishinaabe. You can get a degree in Spanish, but you can't get a degree in Cree or Dene or Inuktitut, like
any indigenous language, basically.
Any Michif, anything. So 16th call to action. We call on post-secondary institutions to create university and college degree diploma programs in Aboriginal languages. And so that's why we went to the administrative, but we launched it. We actually had this huge launch that was all over CBC. Like, if you Googled me, like, you would see like this.
Just Google me.
Not too far, just the front page. No, there's like a CBC article about this huge launch we had for Reconciliation. The president of the university was there. Like, we brought in the administration, we had an elders panel, and we had a students panel. So every perspective, being an administrator, like, what is your barrier, like, to make this Aboriginal language thing happen, like indigenous languages, a priority within this university? Elders, like, tell us why it's so important that, like, tell the administration and everyone here today why it's so important that, languages are the vehicle that carries our cultures forward. into the future. Students, how much do you crave the language? Like, I'm still on my journey. I'm learning Cree right now, and I'm learning Anishinaabe and I never got the opportunity because my grandma went to residential school. Like many generations of my family, have lost the ability to speak my language, and that's something that I want to reclaim. But ultimately, we were able to unanimously pass reconciliation motion at UMSU. That was unanimously passed. And there's an organization called the Canadian Federation of Students, which oversees all of the universities in Canada, all of the student unions in Canada. And we were the only motion that weekend, and there was tons of motions that was unanimously passed. So this is actually a national campaign across Canada now. And we've implemented the reconciliation campaign at almost 10 universities across Canada now to prioritize Indigenous languages and the recognition of Indigenous languages from an institutional standpoint, as if we need that kind of affirmation. But the fact that we can't get degrees in that is absolutely important, if you ask me, because that's sacred knowledge. And so ultimately, after we launched that campaign, we have a really strong Anishinaabe program. That was our first program. So most of the language I've learned is Anishinaabe. But now we have a very strong Cree program at the University of Manitoba. So now I'm taking on some Cree. They're both Algonquin root languages, so they're very similar in terms of the structure I've learned, and I'm hoping to learn both at least at some point in my life and be fluent. And
that's awesome, man. That I applaud you on that, because I'm Cree, and my Cree is very minimal. And I look at my daughter, who's actually OG Cree and Anishinaabe. I think that's how you guys say it. But I mean, she's she's that. So I mean, it's like, her mom speaks I don't know, OG Cree, I think it is.
Yeah, OG Cree.
Yeah, it's like, I applaud you for learning that, and I too want to learn more Cree, and yeah. I need to get on it.
Hey, it's a journey for us all, and you know what? Like, I was that was my main passion, and the cycles of life happen. Like, I'm still trying to find space in my life to fit all of this in. Our people have to work twice as hard just to get the knowledge that should have been inherent. You know what I mean? Like, and you don't realize how much of a blessing it is to kind of live in a household where you can learn language. And I think there's many of us listening right now even that really are looking forward to the future where that's just a part of our education system, like immersion. Like, there's Anishinaabe immersion preschool programs happening now, like full immersion programs. Like, the problem that I see with how people frame Canada, which I call Turtle Island whenever I can, is that Canada wasn't built by the British and French. Canada was built by, if you actually talk about Canada, if you recognize it as a country, which some people don't, and I respect that wholeheartedly. If you were to actually call Canada a country, it was founded on, First Nations peoples and our Indigenous peoples, the French and the British. But all of history books only focus on the French and British building this country. When the first economy was based on the fur trade system with our peoples, who were an inherent part of that economy. Like, our people were inherently entrepreneurial. Like, we traded with other nations. That was the way. If we weren't trading with other nations, that was a sign of war. Like, if we didn't trade with you, we were probably at war with you. Like, that's what I learned in university. And like, we were always entrepreneurial. And what happened was the mode of the economy changed. So once the beaver pelt in the fur trade system morphed into something completely different, and there's and Indigenous peoples and First Nations people and the Métis, who were renowned beaver pelt acquirers, weren't a part of this inherent ecosystem of the economy. We were cast aside, like we weren't the ones who helped build this whole country. You know what I mean? So it's it's just I get fired up about history because I
Which will
think,
be in another podcast.
yeah, absolutely, which would be on another podcast, because it just,
I got to reel us back in here. I love talking about our history, man. I do.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But yeah, that's kind of like what gets me going is and what got me passionate about that. So ultimately, um, I ended up taking a degree called the Aboriginal Governance degree. I call it the Indigenous Governance degree.
Yeah, I don't like
Um,
the word Aboriginal. Why?
yeah,
It's not. It's not us. When I think Aboriginal, I think Aborigines from Australia.
yeah. Actually, I learned in university that Aboriginal is Latin. It's a Latin term, and the ab part of it kind of caught in, like, it has some negative derogatory kind of context within Latin, but from what I understand, Aboriginal is like is a legal term in a legal sense, and I think that's why institutions are still using it and feel like it's okay. But I like to say Indigenous when I can, because
Yeah.
it encompasses Métis, Inuit, and the
Yeah.
First
Exactly.
Nations. So, but yeah, I studied Indigenous governance, minored in management. I actually went and played my final year of football after my presidency, I guess, at the Indigenous Students Association, and then I graduated, and I had an opportunity to be a part of a very I almost got a full scholarship to the University of Oxford. I was a finalist in this scholarship called the Rhodes Scholarship. Who is actually a terrible person, Rhodes. I actually like the whole. That's a whole nother story. So that'll be another podcast. But that ultimately I was a finalist, but I didn't end up going to the University of Oxford, and I got an internship at RBC as a banking advisor while I was in university, and then ultimately I was doing personal banking, so I was doing business, like personal account openings, business account openings, like learning loans, all of that stuff, and I was learning a lot, and I never really like went to university to do that, but what I realized was that you know just as you learn a language, just as the way, you know the best way to reach someone or understand someone is to try to learn their language, because there's certain things in certain languages that you can only explain in that language. For example, like you can't when people like, I don't know how to translate it because it has a certain essence to it in one language that you can't really translate to English or Arabic or any language for that matter, and every language has a way of describing the world in a way that's unique to that language, and that's why language is so important and it carries culture forward. And I had an elder say to me one time, why don't you learn the language of our oppressors? And I was like, I already know English. What are you talking about? And she was
Mhm.
like, no, money. And I never thought of it that way. I said, what do you mean? Like, she's like, language is a money. Like, that language, money is a language that is spoken, in many different forms. You can go to different countries and it's a way of communicating with people. Like, and I would never thought of it that way. So when I was at the bank, I was like, I'm going to learn the language of money, because my people have been historically excluded from this system and the ability to participate in an economy. So I wanted to basically learn that. So while I was in the bank, I was like, okay, let me learn everything I can so that when I leave here eventually, or if I ever leave,
Mhm.
because there's avenues to go in terms of indigenous markets and things like that,
Yeah.
I will know the system in and out, right? So long story short, I got promoted to a business account manager because I wanted to focus on indigenous entrepreneurs, and then I had and what I realized was, only a very small portion of my daily work would have been able to be dealing with indigenous entrepreneurs, and I wanted like all of my work to be dealing with indigenous entrepreneurs. So there was an opportunity to move over to Futurpreneur and work solely with indigenous entrepreneurs. And I took that opportunity wholeheartedly, and I never looked back, because my goal has always been to be a trusted advisor for the resurgence of self-determining indigenous economies, and we're well on our way. And I see so many indigenous youth out there are so passionate and just need support and some help with financing to get their business off the ground, because historically we haven't been able to access loans and equipment and resources to start businesses that we have always been doing, like we are still doing. So so that's a long-winded way of saying how I got to Futurpreneur, and a couple sidetracks here and there, but you know how it goes when you get passionate about things.
Oh man, yeah. But I mean, everyone who's watching or who's going to be watching this later, it's always good to know who the person is, it's potentially who you might be working with to succeed later. And what I mean by that is that we are going to be doing these podcasts. Like I said, I am going to be partnering up with Futurpreneur and Noah to bring more what Futurpreneur does and bring that message of what they're trying to do. And at the same time, what IOPS is all about is sharing Indigenous success, and bridging that gap to help Indigenous people succeed. And so now that's Noah Wilson's story of how he became where he is. So yeah. So what do you think so far of this whole podcast thing? Because I personally believe that podcasting is, it's already here. You see a lot of podcasts popping up, a lot of Indigenous podcasts, which is awesome. How would you see that playing a part in entrepreneurship?
It's a huge part. I think, one of the main things I focus on, with entrepreneurs is how do you get your message out there? And what I mean by your message is really your business, whether that be yourself, as a consultant or as a personal brand, or as your business as a whole. Like, how do you let other people get an insight to who you are as a business and a brand? And I think what people are really wanting these days is authenticity, right? They want the ability to interact with the people that they're buying from. They want to know who they're buying from. They want to know their story. They want to know what they care about, and there's only so much you can fit in a little small, like,
card
5-minute video. So it's the future, my friend. And I think Indigenous peoples are so creative and have such such a beautiful way of viewing the world and seeing solutions and pathways forwards for not only our people, but I think more importantly for the entire world. You know what I mean? And the more that our people get to speak freely and have platforms like this, it's only going to benefit all of us, whoever's podcast it is. So I think it's an awesome thing.
Let's and you guys, Futurpreneur is where Noah works, and he is. Let's say your title. I think I wrote it wrong on the bottom there. I put Indigenous Young Entrepreneurs Business Development Manager. Is that kind of what it is?
Well, basically, it's just reversed, but it really doesn't even matter. But it's like so I'm a business development manager for Indigenous young entrepreneurs. I cover Manitoba and Saskatchewan. So, and I do also cover some of the territories as well. So I'm speaking with people from the Northwest Territories as well, and no one from Nunavut yet, but I'm looking forward to it. So, absolutely looking to reach out to all my brothers and sisters, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit from all over, if possible. And we have a team of 3 Indigenous business development managers. So I'm a part of a team of 3 Indigenous business development managers who are solely dedicated to serving Indigenous entrepreneurs. So
across Canada, right?
Across Canada, we're a national team. So my brother Justin Holness, he covers Ontario eastward, and my sister Sammy Zorb, she covers Alberta westward, and then I'm everything in between. So we're a great team, and we're solely dedicated to Indigenous entrepreneurs and developing and helping bring their dreams to life. And really, we're just a co-pilot on their journey. So
nice. Let's bring up the website real quick, and then we'll probably shut it down with the podcast. But I want to mention too, I just came up with an awesome idea, so I'll tell you after the podcast.
I love good ideas, my friend.
Yeah. So yeah, let's bring up your website here. If you guys have any questions real quick about if anything to do with entrepreneurship, feel free to ask Noah here right now, but let's bring up the website. Yeah. Looking forward to this because there's so many people. Like the one group I have created there's like almost 5,000 in there now, I think. And they're all entrepreneurs or people who are interested in being entrepreneurs. And yeah, I think this will be awesome. So
Yeah, I appreciate it. So I'll share my screen here. So this is our Indigenous landing page here. So you can literally just go on our Futurpreneur website and
how
go
many
under.
folks will recognize Devin or
Yes, and I will mention her. She actually went through our program, so she's a great role model, example of the amazing people I get to work with on a daily basis, and it's so amazing. And you can go to our Indigenous Entrepreneur program. We also have a Black Entrepreneur program, which is awesome. But our Indigenous Entrepreneur program is excellent. If you go on our program, if you go on our website, please join our Futurpreneur Canada Indigenous community on Facebook. So this is a private Facebook group that all three of us business development managers will post opportunities for grants, opportunities for collaborations, really good opportunities we'll post on here. So you'll definitely want to visit the group on this website and then join there. This is a video on Devin Fiddler. She's the founder of She Native Goods. You've probably heard of her if you're from Saskatchewan. She's from Waterhen Lake First Nations. So shout out to Devin Fiddler for being an amazing role model, inspiring a lot of the Indigenous entrepreneurs I speak with. So if you do want to work with one of us, Indigenous business development specialists, and you can read a little bit more about us here, meet our team. If you click here, you can go and view little write-ups about us. So that's Sammy. This is Justin, myself. When I received my star blanket, that was an awesome day. And this is my boss, Joanne, the Director of Indigenous and Northern Communities. So we're a 3-person team covering all of Manitoba, or all of Canada, Turtle Island, I should say. And also we'll post events up here. So we do have a workshop called Launching My Indigenous Startup. I will be hosting the one in June. So be sure to reach out to me or look out for the next session, because it's going to be basically a workshop on how to launch an Indigenous startup. So that's going to be a really good workshop to join. Kendall Netmaker went through our program as well. You've probably heard of him. He's a great leader in the community. We actually partner with him, and he has a cohort group that we work with as well. Very impressive gentleman. And this is where you can sign up to work with the business development expert. So just put your name, where you're from, date of birth, and province. So depending on where province you're from, that's how you'll know which business development manager you'll see. So if you're in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and if you're in the Northwest Territories, you'll probably come to me, and that's how we can connect. So that's a broad overview of this, and to kind of give you a high level overview, we support Indigenous entrepreneurs at 18 to 39 and help them launch their own business. So with up to $60,000 of working capital financing or startup financing, and we'll set you up with a mentor for 2 years after disbursement. So this is a really good program. So not only are we helping you get the funds that you need to start up your business, we're setting you up with an expert mentor. So after you get the financing and you start your business, you have that resource. And my team, we ultimately help you create a business plan and basically help create, your financials or your projections. So we have a business plan writer, which I'll just mention before we close off today. If you join our business plan writer, or it's a completely free service, whether you want to, work with an Indigenous entrepreneur, business development manager like myself, you're going to go through the application portal. But if you just want to check out our business plan writer, just click on here, make an account, make sure you go to your junk mail just in case. And we have a business plan writer that will actually help you create your business and help you create your business plan in a format where you just have to go through each section by section. And what I would recommend that you do, and just a quick, just before I let you, wrap up here, make sure that you recognize yourself, if you do identify as Indigenous, as Indigenous, because there's special there's special sections here where we'll have hear from Destiny. So Destiny Peter is an entrepreneur who went through us. She's an Indigenous entrepreneur. She actually has a business in Regina, and she'll tell you her experience going through the business plan, like what is a pricing strategy, so things like this. But ultimately, my team is here to help you through all of this as well. So you're not alone. This is what we're here for. We're here to help you build your business plan, and here to help you kind of create all the documents you need to access, the resources you'd want, to start your business, whether it be equipment that you need for, that skid steer to get your business off the ground in a concrete business. So what I would say is look around your community. What is missing in your community? What is a service that you wish was there? And can you fill it yourself? Because that is really the essence of business. Is there a problem? Is there a problem that you see that no one else is fixing? Well, then solve it with your solution. And there'd be many people out there who also see that problem and we're like, wow, I can't believe no one thought of that before. Like, obviously, yeah, take my money because I need this service. And when you look at our peoples, if you look at the the socioeconomic divide, we're the most underserved communities in Canada, right? But you know what that also means? It means we have the most opportunity out of any demographic in Canada to drive entrepreneurship. That means that there's endless amount of opportunity for our youth, who are the fastest growing demographic, I should say, in all of Canada. Indigenous peoples are the fastest growing demographic in all of Canada, which will also mean that we will be the fastest growing market in Canada. And I just want to leave you with one last stat here, just to inspire the folks on the call. If we all, if we were able to close, and I believe wholeheartedly we can do this, and it's going to be starting with you and everyone on the call today about your journey and your search for self-determination and your ability to believe in yourself and your business ideas and the services you can provide for society. That's all it takes is self-belief. But if the Indigenous economic development, if we were able to close the significant opportunity gaps between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Canadians, if addressed, would boost the Canadian economy by $27.7 billion annually.
Wow.
So if all of it, like if we were able, if our communities receive the same services, if our communities were treated equally as the rest of Canada, we would provide $27.7 billion annually. And that's how much opportunity our people have out there. You can be a part of that $27.7 billion that would be bringing to that economy. And why don't we benefit from that as a community, right? Like, why don't we retain all the revenues in our communities through the businesses that we own as people, right? So I just commend all of you on the call today. I commend, Nathan for the amazing work he does, inspiring not only me, but all the many people that he works with and the podcast and everything like that, because, we're all going to be a part of, this rise or resurgence, I should say. I try to refrain to use the word rise because we've always been here and we've always been fighting and we've always been, on this journey for self-determination. But there's a real resurgence. There's a real, there's something in the air right now. Like, our people are believing in one another. So it's an awesome time, and I'm super excited to be a part of it. And Nathan, I just commend you for leading the way in many ways, for allowing spaces like this to happen. And really, I think that's what's going to lead, the next generation and the next 7 generations, as we all, hopefully walk with in terms of our decision making. But that's just my short spiel. We'll dive in deeper next time around. I'll get sidetracked some bit. You'll have to bring me back. You'll have to bring me back to the conversation, and then I'll leave the conversation and get sidetracked a bit. But ultimately, I think it was a fun time, man. This was so fun. Super inspired, and hopefully I'll be able to bring on a guest at some point, or be able to invite maybe one of the Indigenous entrepreneurs that I've helped launch, and maybe it'll be you on the call today. So whoever's watching.
Yeah, but it's good to, like, when you're saying, you go off, on the subject. It humanizes the person behind the job title,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
a lot of times when we're dealing with whoever, we just see this person. We don't see him as a human. It's almost like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it humanizes everything. So it's good. And this is what, humanizes the whole position. But I mean, at the same time, it's nice to, you know, talk to an indigenous person who really understands entrepreneurship and knows how to access the money and the grants and this and that. And, like, Lewinsky Monica here says she loves it. So stay tuned, you guys, because we are probably all the month of June, eh?
Month of June, I am coming at. Can I share my screen? I have a couple.
Yeah.
One quick thing before I go. I have a couple events coming up. There's one you definitely do not want to miss, especially if you're in Saskatchewan. Um,
Well, we'll
uh,
be podcasting for the month of June, right?
yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, for
We're
sure.
gonna we're gonna we're gonna combine it. I don't know how we're gonna do it. It's gonna be in sections, maybe, marketing, money, all that kind of stuff. And then you guys can follow along. And at the end, hopefully you absorb all this and, you team up with Noah and become an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. And you know what? That's a great idea, Nathan. And I think that's part of what you might tell me afterwards. So I'll save it.
Yeah.
We'll leave them on. We'll
I
leave
got
them on
no,
notice. You'll have to join again to find out.
yeah, exactly. Stay tuned for part two. Just like on those TikToks,
Yeah.
they say follow for part two or something. They'll get
All
you
for
really
part
into it,
two.
the TikTok video, and you're like, they're like part
Yeah.
two.
Hey, it's the suspense, the anticipation. It's a must. So let's
Yeah.
keep it there. So let me share my screen quickly because I'm super, super excited for this event. Um, so this is events I'll be throwing June 10th, 2021. Okay, 4:30 p.m. Saskatchewan time. You do not want to miss this. It'll be special guest Destiny Peter from Tangles and Hair Beauty Salon. She's an Indigenous entrepreneur. Just opened another shop in Moose Jaw. Can you believe it? Amazing.
Mm.
Amazing. Okay, so this is how to become a First Nations entrepreneur in Saskatchewan. So I'm going to be inviting my partners Square One, which is a business
Oh yeah.
development. Yeah, they're great, and Saskatchewan Indian Equity Foundation.
Yeah.
And we're going to give you a really good event. We're going to show you how Square One can help you create your small business, Saskatchewan small business supports and resources. We're going to do a high level overview of the programs Futurpreneur has, the access to financing we can give you, and of course our mentorship. And then lastly, we're going to show you how we can file collaborate with SEAF, which is the Saskatchewan Indian Equity Foundation, about their programs and their funding that they have. And most importantly, we'll have a special guest, Destiny Peter, to give you that real life kind of insight to the Indigenous entrepreneurial experience. Can you believe it? So this is going to be a great event. This workshop's for you if you're an aspiring or current First Nations entrepreneur from Saskatchewan, have a business idea you're looking to develop, or even if you're slightly thinking about one. You want to know how to access capital as a First Nations entrepreneur in Saskatchewan, and you want an opportunity to gain expert insights from the very ones who are leading the way in each one of these organizations. So I organized this shortly after the event you helped me with earlier, Nathan. So shout out to you for that, for our Métis entrepreneurs. And that will be hosted June 10th. And I will be also hosting later that month a workshop, a really in-depth workshop on how to launch your Indigenous startup. So we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of things. I'm going to give you assignments. We're going to do breakout sessions. It's going to be really fun. And I hope all of you join.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking to Nathan throughout the month too, because it's Indigenous History Month as well. So
Yeah. That sounds. Wow. That actually sounds exciting. It really is. I get excited when you, like you said, anything to do with Indigenous success. Especially business. That's awesome. And you're right. I didn't realize that much money. 27 billion per year.
27.7 billion
Billion.
billion
Tax
annually.
free. Just kidding.
Tax free. Yeah, actually, and that's part of the reason why we have a team too, because a business development manager for non-Indigenous entrepreneurs won't actually understand the nuances and advantages we can help you gain as a First Nations entrepreneur. It's a little bit different between Métis, First Nations, and Inuit, but that's how our communities are. We're all very diverse, and there's opportunities for each organization or community collaborate, and I hopefully will connect the dots for you, for all the people on the call today, and whoever works with me. And I'm working with, almost over 100 Indigenous entrepreneurs right now, so it's an exciting time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Hopefully I'll get a lot more from here. But I want to thank Noah. You guys stay tuned, because all of June, Noah and me will be going live, and who knows, we will be bringing guests on to the show, because we do want to encourage you guys. If you are thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, if you have an idea and you still know gut, you don't know where to get started, you guys want to make sure to tune into this. I will be posting all the times we're going to be going live, and how we're going to do this and how we're going to break it down. And definitely I want to promote that June 10th show. Definitely I want to have you guys on even before that, so it gets more eyes on it. But with that, you guys, I want to thank you for joining in. You know, I was gonna let Noah close, but this ain't the closing. This is just the introduction of Futurpreneur. So I'm gonna skip that, because we're gonna see Noah here lots for June for sure. So you guys tune in. Make sure to tune in. Check out Futurpreneur right now.ca, right? Futurpreneur.ca.
Futurpreneur.ca, and yes, and you can reach out to me. It's Wilson at Futurpreneur.ca. Otherwise, just go on the website, sign up. You'll go into my files. I'll reach out to you, and I'll be ultra excited and inspired when we have our great conversation about all the great things you're going to be doing for yourself and your community. So, Chimigwech, Nathan, for having me today, and Chimigwech for everyone who's joined us today on this evening.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for joining the show, and I'll stay on. I'm going to chat with you in a bit, so we'll talk soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, you guys, there goes Noah. Remember, he will be coming on. We're going to do a podcast all of June, and it's all about entrepreneurship, so make sure you tune in for that. With that, thank you for joining. It felt good to go live again. It really did. I mean, when I say to go live on my own show, and if you guys are interested in podcasting, hit me up. Definitely would love to share my knowledge with you guys, and hopefully you guys do something like this, or like Foxing Around, or Spring Spirit, or Denayate, or all the other Indigenous podcasts out there. Don't forget to check out IOPS.ca for your daily jobs. That's where I am trying to make it the #1 Indigenous job board in Canada. With that, you guys, we'll see you